Welcome to our series, Back to the Basics. This is lesson 3 and part 3, and we have been discussing belief in God. Today, I want to talk about two arguments as we end this topic. I want to talk about the argument from design and the argument from fine tuning. Now, normally these arguments are made separately, but for the sake of time and because they're very connected in various ways, we will discuss these two topics together. First, let's talk about the argument from design. The argument goes like this: the universe has design. If there is design, then there must be a designer. Therefore, God exists. Now, let's briefly discuss fine tuning. Fine tuning of the universe means that elemental and atmospheric conditions to make life possible on Earth had to be dialed to a very narrow, precise amount and measure to make Earth life permitting. As a result of simple observation and centuries of scientific research, it is apparent that the universe shows design, complexity, order, and hair splitting precision to make life possible. So let's look at some examples of design and fine tuning. Take, for instance, the moon. The moon is one object out of many in our solar system that makes life possible here on Earth. The moon's gravitational pull keeps the Earth steady so that it does not wobble off its axis, therefore giving us a stable climate to live in. Because of the moon and its gravitational pull, tidal waves are created in the ocean. Well, why is tidal waves important? Tidal waves help remove pollutants and circulate nutrients for the survival of aquatic plants and animals in the ocean. Without tides, foods such as crabs, mussels, snails, and seaweed could not exist. Now let's talk about the sun and its relationship to the earth. The sun is just over 92 million miles from the earth. The earth is just the precise distance from the sun to maintain the right surface temperature to permit life on earth. The earth is tilted on its axis 23.5 degrees as it orbits the sun, which gives the earth its seasons. However, if the earth had no tilt on its axis and remained perpendicular, seasons would not exist. July and January would be the same temperature. Weather patterns would be unchanging. There would be extreme humidity and extreme drought, and it would be fixed in certain parts of the earth. And only a small portion of the earth will be suitable for us to live in and cultivate plants and animal life. Next on the list is oxygen. Oxygen, as we all know, is essential for life on Earth. Oxygen is the result of photosynthesis. Some of you may remember that photosynthesis is the process by which plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to create oxygen. The oxygen produced by photosynthesis is the very oxygen that we breathe to make human life possible. Well, what would happen if we were to reduce the oxygen in the atmosphere? This will allow increased sunlight to enter into the Earth's surface, creating more humidity and increasing the overall temperature of the Earth. However, if we were to increase the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere, it would also increase the risk of fire and accelerates combustion, where things will start to spontaneously catch on fire if they got too hot. Also, oxygen bonds to iron, which creates rust. Too much oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere will cause metals to deteriorate much faster. Imagine how that would negatively affect cars, buildings, bridges, medical supplies, electronics, all these things that use metal as a necessary ingredient. Now let's talk about 4 necessary forces of the universe: gravity, weak force, electromagnetic force, and strong force. Without these forces, life would not be possible on Earth. And we're not talking about human life, we're talking about life at its most fundamental, basic level, the life of a cell. Let's talk about gravity. Gravity is necessary for a life-permitting universe. Gravity holds together planets, stars, galaxies, and our very solar system. Gravity keeps the moon orbiting around the Earth orbiting around the sun orbiting around the Milky Way, and of course, gravity keeps us from floating off the surface of the Earth. Now let's briefly look at weak force. Weak force causes radioactive decays, which are responsible for sunlight and heating the Earth. Without weak force, life on Earth is not possible. Weak force operates on the subatomic level between neutrons, protons, electrons, and neutrinos. These are extremely small particles and are responsible for nuclear fusion. Next is the electromagnetic force. This is an electrically charged particle, such as electrons and protons, that create a magnetic force that becomes a magnetic field. The electromagnetic force can be described as moving electric currents cause electric fields, and magnetic fields cause electric currents to flow. It's responsible for helping atoms to form and for chemistry to exist. Now let's look at strong force. Strong force is what keeps atoms together. The strong force is what keeps the positively charged protons together in the nucleus of the atom, preventing them from repelling away from each other. The atom is the basic building block of all matter. Without the strong force, nothing physical or material would exist. If the strong force were weaker or stronger by only 5%, life on Earth would not be possible. Now, to better help us understand the argument from design and fine tuning, let us look at a video from Reasonable Faith authored by Dr. William Lane Craig.
From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life. Or consider the expansion rate of the universe. This is driven by the cosmological constant. A change in its value by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 120th parts would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In either case, the universe would again be life-prohibiting. Or another example of fine-tuning. If the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to an incomprehensible precision of 1 part in 10 to the 10 to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. The fact is, our universe permits physical, interactive life only because these, and many other numbers, have been independently and exquisitely balanced on a razor's edge. Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely. What is the best explanation for this astounding phenomenon? There are three live options. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Which of these options is the most plausible? According to this alternative, the universe must be life-permitting. The precise values of these constants and quantities could not be otherwise. But is this plausible? Is a life-prohibiting universe impossible? Far from it. It's not only possible, it's far more likely than a life-permitting universe. The constants and quantities are not determined by the laws of nature. There's no reason or evidence suggests that fine-tuning is necessary. How about chance? Did we just get really lucky? No. The probabilities involved are so ridiculously remote as to put the fine-tuning well beyond the reach of chance. So, in an effort to keep this option alive, some have gone beyond empirical science and opted for a more speculative approach, known as the multiverse. They imagine a universe generator that cranks out such a vast number of universes that, odds are, life-permitting universes will eventually pop out. However, there's no scientific evidence for the existence of this multiverse. It cannot be detected, observed, measured, or proved. And the universe generator itself would require an enormous amount of fine-tuning. Furthermore, small patches of order are far more probable than big ones. So the most probable observable universe would be a small one, inhabited by a single, simple observer. But what we actually observe is the very thing that we should least expect: a vast, spectacularly complex, highly ordered universe, inhabited by billions of other observers. So even if the multiverse existed, which is a moot point, it wouldn't do anything to explain the fine-tuning. Given the implausibility of physical necessity or chance, the best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned for life may very well be it was designed that way. A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect monkeyed with physics, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. There is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge.
Now, we've looked at 5 examples or 5 arguments to prove that God exists. We looked at the argument from desire, the moral argument, the argument from design, the argument from fine-tuning, the argument from cosmology. And these arguments are meant to prove that it's more probable to believe that God exists than to not believe. Now, I was reading a book, and it's a pretty old book, but it was a debate. And it was a debate with a man named Thomas B. Warren. This is back in 1978. And he gave a list of some things that we would have to believe if God did not exist. And I found this list very interesting and highly illogical. So here's some things that he pointed out if God did not exist. If God does not exist, then matter is eternal. If God does not exist, then matter is all that exists and has always existed. If God does not exist, not one piece of matter is of any more value than any other piece of matter. For an example, a paperclip is just as valuable as a baby, and we know that is untrue. If God does not exist by chance, non-living matter became living matter. If God does not exist by chance, non-living matter became conscious matter. If God does not exist by chance, non-living matter became a human body. If God does not exist, by chance, non-living matter became a conscious brain. If God does not exist, then we have to believe by chance and by accident we have the reproductive system, the digestive system, the circulatory system, and the respiratory system. We have to believe that these all evolved unguided by accident. And by chance, non living matter developed intelligence. We must also believe, if God does not exist, that human beings are nothing more than organized matter without objective purpose and value. And I will also add, if God does not exist, the design and fine tuning of the universe is unguided and void of intelligence and is a result of a cosmic accident. So hopefully now you have affirmed your belief in God or reestablished your belief in God as believers. As we think about these five arguments, I want to remind you that these are examples of general revelation. General revelation asserts that God's existence can be known by observation of the natural world. We call that natural theology. And Paul actually alludes to this in Romans and then David in Psalms. In Romans chapter 1, verse 20, it says this: For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. Paul is saying that there are no true atheists, that it is evident just by looking at the world, looking at the order, looking at the cosmos, that it's logical to come to the conclusion that God exists. Additionally, Psalms chapter 19, verse 1 says this: The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. These are all examples of general revelation, which is God's revelation to all people at any given time by simple observation. Now, there are limitations to general revelation. The problem of general revelation is that it opens up the possibility of belief in any God, not just the God of the Bible. So when we talk about special revelation asserts that God has chosen to reveal himself to humanity in very personal and specific ways. Moreover, God enters into humanity's time, space, proximity for the purpose of revealing his nature, his character, his personality, his devotion, his judgment, his love, his plan, and his purpose for us in relationship with him. So moving forward, we'll be dealing with specific revelation, and on our next lesson, we will talk about the attributes and the character of God. I want to thank you for your time. I hope this video was informative and also encouraging. Have a blessed day. Thank you.